Welcome to the Conscious Investor 1 year anniversary look back conversation. I'm Eva Yazhari, and I am joined by Stacey Lindsay and Mathilde Beniflah here to have a robust conversation around what the past year has looked like and felt like for us at the Conscious Investor. Welcome, Stacey. Welcome, Mathilde.
Thank you. This is so exciting. It's been a year. I can't believe this. It's been a year.
I know this year has really gone by super fast. Just to give some numbers to those who are listening, at the Conscious Investor, we have shed light on roughly 50 organizations or individuals doing deep and meaningful work relating to impact investing and social good. And we've really touched on this full spectrum and range of conscious living and topics around how to be a conscious investor in all aspects of our lives. So it's been incredible. And I want to thank both you, Stacey, as our editorial director, and Mathilde as our resident idea generator and friend and collaborator, and many times over unsung hero of the work that we do at the Conscious Investor. So it's a pleasure to have this conversation with you both today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Eva. And I think one of the most profound things that has happened over the past year is that we've had these amazing ideas to start, and we've had these amazing interviews, but how that's really compounded and led to so many other amazing interviews and amazing ideas. And just, overall, this robust, as you said, robust conversation about really what it means to be an impact investor these days, but with your capital, but in all areas of your life. So I'm really excited to reflect back and kind of look at everything we've learned and then look ahead for a bit. So I'd love to start by asking you both some questions, kind of big picture to start, because we've covered such a variety in terms of topics and geographical regions, ideas, different businesses. What has been your biggest learning from this so far? And I'll start with you, Eva.
I think we've demystified and really pushed the envelope on a number of very important topics. But I think the biggest learning is that impact doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be hierarchical. It doesn't have to be only for a specific group of people or insiders. It doesn't even have to be aspirational. It is something that we can all do and have more of in our lives right now. And it's, we've learned from all of those whom we have spoken with over the past 12 months that often it is just setting an intention or asking deeper questions to come to the place where investors or even entrepreneurs that are building sustainable businesses or even consultants for large companies can bring more values into their work. So I think the biggest kind of nugget that has come out of the past year has been this space is still small, but the potential for its growth for everyone that's listening today and beyond is significant. And I think the message that I think we've communicated that has come from our hearts is that everybody can be an impact investor.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up sustainability, because I think that's one of my takeaways. I think I love how deep we go in each profile that we do. It's really about going beyond the buzzwords and digging into what these big words like impact and sustainability mean to all these entrepreneurs. And I think sustainability is a great example of that. And I think one of my biggest learnings from the Conscious Investor this year has been really unpacking how different entrepreneurs have defined it. There's a great piece, Economy for Good, that profiles several different entrepreneurs and asks them what sustainability means to them and their company. And for one of them, it was making sure that their business has the least harm on the environment. Another one was saying it's about having an ethical mission. A third one said it's about financial sustainability, or the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. So all this to say is that I think these words can be vague, but the Conscious Investor has helped me unpack what they can mean and the weight they can have, and how different people are embodying those values.
Absolutely. If I could add on as well, Our piece with Stephen Brettingmeyer around technology in impact investing was extremely revelatory for me because, we do think in the frameworks that we're given, Mathilde, like you rightly pointed out, we think in the ESG, but as Mathilde has put it, sometimes in our work together, sometimes the G can be more emphasized, sometimes the E can be more emphasized. But what Stephen really brought up was that it almost should be like ESTG or something like that, where technology is a part in its own way to express impact. Now, we all know that T can be utilized to express environmental, social, and governance change, but somehow there's a little bit more there to include it, I think, long-term in kind of more of its own category. And that sparked a lot of thought within me.
There's a major theme here, I think, in general about thinking outside the box. And that's probably the biggest learning and biggest takeaway from me this year. All the people we've talked to, all the businesses that we've profiled. And stemming off of what you both said, which I wholeheartedly feel the same and agree with, one step to add on to that, or an element to add on to that, is I feel that true impact, true activism, and true advocacy is how you treat your community, those in your community, and how leaders treat their employees. We've been learning about this so much with some of these people we've interviewed. To give two examples, Dan Price, who you interviewed, Eva, with Ed, and also Arlen Hamilton. These two individuals just really conceptualize this whole idea of inclusivity, this real progressive idea of including all thoughts, all minds, all ideas. And that's how you can really, really make impact and change lives in the worlds of your employees, but also too, that can have a domino effect in their entire community. So that was huge for me. And I want to see more of that change into 2021. Speaking of individuals, we've interviewed so many of these true architects, like architects of evolution. What insight, and maybe if you could name one or two people who have really, really stood out to you, who would that be? And Mathilde, we'll start with you.
So I think I'm partial to this person because she is the CEO of a Beyond Capital Fund portfolio company, but I am endlessly inspired by Joanna Bishel. And I think what has inspired me the most about her is her bold vision to scale and just being absolutely fearless about identifying markets that need innovation. And I think the biggest lesson that I took away from that conscious investor profile of her was really learning to be adaptable and meeting your customers where they are. Instead of imposing a particular framework or technology on them, really working with them to identify what their unique needs are and having an impact in that way. So I think the accessibility of her company and the bold vision she has for expansion into new markets has made me feel like, she is really a leader worth watching well into the future.
I agree. And I'm super excited to have her in our portfolio at Beyond Capital as well. For me, Stacey, Deepti Sharma really stands out. I don't know if it's because I'm also from a borough of New York City, born and raised in Staten Island, or, I grew up in a family of grassroots change and social justice actions on both sides. But she is really, taking that grassroots approach. I think that's what's super inspiring about her. She's actually running for city council. I don't know if you saw that. But at the moment, she's running for city council and fundraising for her kind of initial stages of her campaign. She's on the streets. She's a mother in the trenches. And she exemplifies everything I fight for. But she's arguably fighting, I think, harder for it in some ways. And I look up to her for the work that she does, because it comes from a place of deep authenticity. If I could add one more person, I also think that Daniel Epstein of the Unreasonable Institute will change the game over the next decade. Around the conversation and who is included in impact investing. He really gets that impact investing can be for everyone. And he set out, since we did the I believe, profile or Q&A with him, he set out to create a collective called the Unreasonable Collective, where half of the members off the bat would be women or people of color. And he has absolutely achieved that. It is very refreshing to join that group and, log on and kind of, they have brain trusts and they have different conversations and deal flow, and really be in a space where I think it truly represents the future. And Daniel is known for bringing networks together, but I think what's unique about him is that he also brings creativity into the equation in thinking about the whole picture.
Dan is certainly somebody who practices what he preaches. It's incredible what he does. My mind is blown, just learning more and more about everything that he's pushing forward. And I have to agree, I have to echo Deepti. She's one, just the more nuanced things that she talks about too, when she started that catering business and the company that was bringing more awareness to these small businesses, these small food truck businesses. And when she was talking, we talked about this in the interview, with these big companies about true inclusivity. And again, I use the term thinking outside the box, but just thinking true inclusivity, making people feel seen and heard from different cultures and different walks of life, that can start from food, what you serve during your meetings, bringing more awareness around that. That was just a light bulb moment for me too, that no area should be overlooked and there's no idea too big, too small, everything should be considered. But yeah, Deepti is amazing. And I'll go back, I already mentioned Arlen, and I got to mention Arlen again, because she has really found the beauty in the cracks, I think, and the beauty in the overlooked. And it has been genius, and it has been so smart. And she's talked to so many of these venture capitalists, saying, you're really missing out on these opportunities by not investing in these female founders, by not investing in these founders from the BIPOC and queer communities. She will, though. She went ahead and she's doing it, and she's building this incredible empire and lifting all these boats as she rises the tide. But it's also, there's just such a brilliance in, again, finding the beauty in those overlooked places and finding new ways to use privilege, and not looking at privilege as necessarily something that's bad, but privilege is a currency. And if you have it, and most of us do, use it in a beneficial way. And that was a huge learning for me. And I can't wait to see what she's going to do in 2021. She's incredible. So shifting gears a little bit from the individuals to more structural changes that we've seen. We talked a lot about governance and different tactics in business, changes in society. What are you hoping to see really flourishes in 2021?
My list is very long, but I will narrow it down for our listeners and audience here. I think the first is bringing bias to the forefront. And while I think that it plays a role in diversity and inclusion, and I think that that's a very important conversation to have around racial justice, equality between men and women, I actually think that bias in the conversation makes us also think about other biases that we may have that go beyond what was obvious in 2020, and I think finally has started to change after a long time coming. And one of those areas is thinking around cognitive bias and information avoidance around climate change, and why we continually deny the fact that our climate is changing and it will impact us no matter what. I'm looking forward to hosting some conversations through some networks that I'm a part of around how climate change might impact your portfolio, how it might impact your life long term. But that is, I think, a bias being more part of the conversation, I think is certainly a change, societal change that we're seeing right now that will extend to many different areas of our lives. And I'm hoping that it enters that topic, because I think it's super important. I could give one more, which is, I think we're going to see with the new presidential administration, I think we will see an unlocking of ESG capital from pension funds. And that will bring in a lot more capital for ESG investing and into the space in general, which will allow for more proliferation of strategies and fund managers. It probably will make it easier for women and people of color to raise funds given that ESG would typically come with a commitment to diversity and inclusion. But I think it's very exciting because this is probably the next decade where we will see large allocations of capital to ESG that will make this more mainstream in everyday investing.
I think if I were to pick one issue, and of course, I think many things will change as a result of this landmark year that has been so challenging for so many of us. I think the importance of safety and equity in the workplace. I think COVID-19 and then the protests sparked by the murder of George Floyd inspired a larger movement around justice that I think more people are paying attention to. And I think after all of the talk and the statements made by corporations, people are looking for action. And I think people are going to be checking to see who is using social causes as marketing tools rather than putting in place more permanent changes to address systemic issues. And so, at The Conscious Investor, we've shed light on the shocking inequities in the restaurant industry with Deepti, but also with Saru, that really taught me a lot about an industry that I don't think that much about, or that I haven't seen much in the news about how it treats its workers. And I think in a year that's made us all rethink what it means to be an essential worker, 2021 might see more attention put towards protections and rights in the labor force.
I want to stand on a rooftop and just echo and scream everything you just said, Mathilde, because I agree wholeheartedly so much. And stemming off of that, one thing that is really that I've thought about so much this entire year is true leadership, and what true inclusive, progressive leadership means and will continue to mean. I was really struck by Houman in a positive way by Houman's article that he wrote for The Conscious Investor earlier this year, just looking at his ideas and how he really sees employees, how he really sees people, and how that is so incredibly important. That stayed with me. And I hope that employee and leaders and employers will start to really lean into the power of their employees more, and to listen to the voices of employees, and to listen to the needs, the point of views, and to not stay confined within these sort of draconian, arbitrary parameters and restrictions. I learned so much from Richard Shirtcliffe, who we profiled on The Conscious Investor in our story, and then also Eva, who you interviewed on the podcast. I admire him so greatly in this field because he is really turning leadership on its head, and he values the time and insight of all of his employees. He respects their goals, their ideas, and he also really thinks inclusively in terms of gathering the ideas of everyone and anyone in the business. So he doesn't necessarily just go to all the marketing people for ideas about marketing. Maybe he'll go to somebody in HR. And it's just taking this myriad, refreshing approach to leadership. And again, I'm hoping leaders will really start to lean into the power of their employees. And I also just am really empowered by how impact investors are becoming more aware of how these companies are governing. And that's a huge part of it too. You can move your capital toward good, but you can also really get involved. And I know even Mathilde, you're so active in this. You can really see, okay, you look good here, but how is this really being, how are these inner workings in the company day to day? That's impact. That's true progressive governance. And so excited about that.
Yes. To make a comment about that, in 2020, we redefined our investment strategy at Beyond Capital to explicitly state the backing of conscious leaders like Joanna, and to make it clear that that is the type of founder that we're looking for, not just an interesting technology or innovation that could have great scale and impact potential, but there must be a leader behind, or leaders behind that company, driving an awareness of all stakeholders.
What are some aspects of the content that we've covered, some ideas, things in the works that you feel warrant more attention, that maybe aren't getting the attention that they need right now, but you're hoping that more media outlets or more people will be shedding light on this next year?
This might be a cop-out answer, but I think the most underappreciated piece of content that we have at The Conscious Investor are the guides. I think the guides are filling a gap in the knowledge market around what it means to be a conscious investor, a conscious consumer, you name it. I think from understanding what ESG investing really means to identifying financial advisors, subscribers of the Conscious Investor will probably find the most value here because we're sharing ideas and resources that will inspire you on your own journey. I think we all understand that conscious investing is part of a broader lifestyle and mindset shift around being intentional with your money, your time, and your action. So I would encourage our audience to really dive into those guides and see what inspires you and what sparks interest in you to dig deeper into each of those topics.
I echo that. And as somebody that is so happy and fulfilled to see the vision that you and I, Stacey, had early on come to life and be, living and breathing for over a year now. I just want to say, I think that getting out all of our content to friends, family members, colleagues of our readers is important, and I know it will have impact. And we may not be able to measure it. We may not be able to know exactly how many, tangential eyeballs see our content when somebody forwards it. But I just am so enthusiastic about what we've put out there, the guides and beyond, that I think that the whole thing can gain more attention and a greater audience in 2021. And I would love for all of our readers to help us with that.
I third that, absolutely. And I'm so proud of this, so proud of everything we've built, we continue to build. And yeah, I mean, realistically, we could spend 3 hours talking about this, every single person, every single story, every single interview, every single thing that we want to shed more light on and talk more about. If there's one takeaway, it's that there's power, everyone has power. And this has been a theme, but I wonder if we need to even state this more explicitly, because, and I hope people take this away when they visit the Conscious Investor, everybody has power. And you can start in the big ways by, investing in this incredible company. You can start in seemingly smaller ways too, by how you spend your dollar, what companies you decide to support, to where you buy your groceries. There's this real, incredible, critical shift happening right now. It's happening in capitalism, and it's happening in our culture, in different cultures, and it's happening in society overall, where people are starting to really understand their power, I think. And if we continue on that path, I have nothing but faith that really, really amazing things are going to start coming into the fold. They already are, but I mean, it goes without saying, 2020 was an incredibly hard year. And it was one of change, and it was one of stretching our souls and our ideas. And it was one of a lot of loss and a lot of learning. But ultimately, I think that there's a lot of good that's coming from this. And I'm hoping that from the content that we've built and the things that I've learned from my community, the things that I've learned from you, Mathilde, and you, Eva, it's that we all have power, and to never let that, anything dim that, to never let anything dilute that. And I hope that our readers really just believe in themselves and know that. One last question for you, of course. We're turning into a new year. Change is happening, all these great things. What are you most hopeful about right now? What are you most excited about right now?
Well, like you, I refuse to see 2020 as a bad year. Obviously, some bad things happened, and I think many that go completely unnoticed. But I think we have some work to do still to acknowledge this year, but it's possible to do that work. Every day when you open up the news and you see how many people died from COVID, I can't help but think about September 11th and how many people died in that tragedy that, is now completely dwarfed in comparison to what we're going through with this pandemic. And so I think the opportunity here is to honor those who have suffered and lost with the real strides that we take forward and the actions that we take forward to truly make change, and hope that, a year like 2020 doesn't happen again. So that's kind of really, what I've been thinking about and really what's been on my mind as I reflect and wrap up the year. And then, using my investor hat, I am very hopeful about the next wave of innovations coming our way. whether they are in the kind of revaluing of essentials and basic goods and services that we support at Beyond Capital, whether they're in the mobility space where we'll start to see more, efficient and environmentally friendly technologies, or honestly, whether they are some of the funny little things that I had the benefit of buying in my home, such as a tabletop composter this year that will make my life even more sustainable. I think there's a lot that is on the innovation side, like really hopeful that's coming our way.
What's making me hopeful about 2021 and beyond is that the 2020s will be a decade of action. We've been having conversations about representation, about the need for combating bias for many, many years. But there's been limited action. And I think one slightly depressing statistic that I like to mention is that in 2019, WeWork received more funding as it was failing than all female-owned businesses from venture capital in that entire year. And so when I see that, it doesn't seem like an optimistic statistic, but I think, female fund managers are currently representing 5% of all fund managers, but 90% of those are what you would call emerging fund managers or first-time fund managers. And what that means is those funds will come to fruition. And over, the next few years, we're going to see an explosion in female-owned businesses and female-owned funds investing in those businesses that I think have the potential to really reshape our society. And we've profiled some of them, like Arlen, like Teresa Farmaki, like Leslie Harwell, but it's hard not to feel optimistic when you think about all the budding entrepreneurs and funds that are just getting started now. So I think in 2021 and beyond, we're going to see a lot of that talk hopefully translate into some really significant action. So I remain optimistic.
And you bring up such a critical point too, talking about the WeWork example, for instance, because I think that journalism and storytelling is, as it always has, but it continues to play such an important role. And I feel like there's a recharged or renewed faith in journalism. And I really hope that in content, really intentional content businesses that are shedding light on these stories and on the dark aspects of society and the dark sides of capitalism that we need to know about. But what is really, really making me excited is I'm seeing more and more people are using the darker stories and kind of these unfortunate, lopsided inequities with capital and whatnot as fuel, and not getting dejected, but actually taking that and using that as fuel. And we've seen that happen, over the summer with these incredible protests. And we've seen it happen, I think, definitely with our recent election. Like, people rose up and really fought against this. And if we can we will continue to see that. Again, looking at things not to dejected over it, but to use it as fuel, to use it as momentum to move forward. That's when real change is really happening. And again, people like Arlen, people like Saru, these incredibly strong women building up more female founders. The sky's the limit.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much, both of you, for being such important contributors to the work that we all do together. And thank you to everybody who's listened today for your loyalty and your precious time for the message that we are aiming to communicate.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Mathilde.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone.